Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and replying to a question that I got in my Spanish channel regarding the potential blackout in the not so distant future. Several countries worried about this. Some people think it's not going to be happening. It's just all scaremongering. Not really. This case is quite different. You have some serious that do things right, that are, in the case of Austria, they're saying it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, according to them. They see it as a very, very likely possibility, up to the point where they're saying this, that it's going to be happening. Eventually, sooner or later, you're going to be seeing an impact, a problem with the grid, either a cyber attack on the grid, terrorist attack, problems with the infrastructure because of poor planning, because of other factors. But they see it as something that is very, very likely to happen, and several other countries are seeing similar things. So what is it that you're going to be doing in terms of self-defense when this happens? It's going to be depending a lot on your personal circumstance, your own situation, where you happen to be. If you're in the middle of the city, it's not going to be the same thing as being in the suburbs, of being isolated in some distant homestead further away. Now, I'm going to be doing this video based on things that have happened before, that I've seen firsthand, and how it's been impacted. For example, the idea of using less than lethal buckshot, rubber pellets, I think there is room for that. I mean, I've been standing literally in a gun store watching business owners run and buy all of the stock that they had of less than lethal ammo, and they actually ran out. I saw it myself firsthand, standing there talking with the guys in the gun store, friends of mine, that they sold out, and these guys were running in. Some of these were running and trying to buy a gun right there and then, and it was told to them, you cannot do that. You cannot, I cannot sell you a gun right now. You cannot take it home. I can sell it to you, but you cannot take it until you get your paper sorted out. So this is going to be taking a while. So the advice here is get things before you actually need them. And for all of this stuff, I'll leave links below, guys, for everything. Amazon, it's kind of hit and miss in terms of availability. So get what you need while you still can. Many of the things I'm looking at lately are just sold out. There's just not enough stock for the demand. So the idea of using less than lethal buckshot, has it got a place? I know that people have used it. I know that some business owners have used it to scare away, and you would say, yeah, you could have scared anyone, you could have scared those people away just by having the gun or just shooting it in the air or to the side. Could be. This though has a possibility. It does go along with a certain amount of training that most people do not have. So that has to be said as well. If you're going to be using a pump action shotgun and going between less than lethal and lethal ammunition, there's a possibility for a disaster right there, unless you're quite skilled with firearms, which honestly most people just are not. Most people have never taken a shotgun defensive shooting classes, classes dedicated specifically on running shotguns. Even if you took it, I took the defensive shooting a shotgun class, and it was great. I learned a lot, but I honestly have not kept up with the amount of training that I should have if this would be my primary option in terms of using less than lethal buckshot slugs for a distance. If you want to do that, you should be staying on top of it in terms of training and practicing that quite often. I would say that at least every couple of weeks, once a month, run different drills and get used to that, if that's going to be your plan, right? So it's got a place. I also play devil's advocate in saying, if you're using a firearm, and in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, you have the perfect example. The point here is, was he in fear of his life or not? Realistically, was his life really in danger? Playing devil's advocate, you could say, well, if your life is really in danger, why are you using less than lethal ammunition, which it's not as effective as stopping someone? If I know that my life is in imminent danger, I want something that's immediately going to be stopping that guy. Maybe the AR-15, like the one Kyle used. So that's kind of the argument. But having been in situations like that, I can tell you that in some cases, if you have the time, if you have the option, this may be something you could put to use and avoid having to end up with a dead guy in your lawn, right? Which is always a good idea as long as it's possible. So the shotgun for that sort of thing, for me, is going to be a Mossberg 500. This is the first generation of tactical Mossbergs. This actually comes from UK. For you guys in UK that think you cannot own a decent firearm, yes, it is quite restrictive, but this gun actually comes from an English dude that bought it in I think in England, right, over there. So yeah, that's 24-inch barrel, I think it is, so you know that minimum length that you're supposed to have, but it's still a 7-shot, 7+1 Mossberg 500 shotgun, which is a quite decent gun. With that extra capacity, it would be well suited for like that kind of civil unrest situation. Even better if you can have something like a semi-automatic AR, by all means. Now, there's also the case of people, I have a guy that we're messaging over in Instagram. He's a park ranger in Patagonia. That guy has to walk 1,000 miles for going to the bathroom or buying a sandwich. Distances are huge in the south of South America. It's until Buenos Aires. If you keep going down, man, it is no man's land. And I mean, it's nothing compared to US, where you have kind of like roads within walking distance eventually. No, this is hundreds and hundreds of miles before you find any kind of road if you are in certain areas, right? And that's it is pretty underpopulated all south of Buenos Aires, and the guy is over there, and for him the shotgun is going to be quite useless. Still, the sidearm would make a lot of sense, but he actually has a 308 bolt action rifle, and it is kind of his main gun with a proper scope, which this gun does not have. This is a short little scout format type of rifle, but you would want to get a nice scope. And it's talking about fighting in the dark, you want to get something that is illuminated, that has light. Now, in a setup like the one I have here for the AR, what you have here is flashlight, mounted flashlight, and a red dot. This is the way I see it, the minimum setup I like to have whenever possible, right? When this is a possibility for you, you have your AR with a nice light. This is an OLIGHT Odin. This was sent to me for reviewing, so full disclaimer on that. But yeah, this is going to be quite powerful. You have a very decent light there, and you have maybe one of the best red dots in the market. Aim point micro with mounted on a Daniel Defense mount. This is a very nice little setup for that kind of thing. It's not exactly cheap, especially these days, and yeah, it's not always available depending on your own legislation. It may not be the case, but shotgun, rifle, these two are definitely something you can have. And for people in those conditions, you could put that to good use if ever needed, if you're living in that kind of place. Now, for most people in somewhat of a urban, suburban environment, if you cannot have the AR, or if you cannot have your AK or whatever other semi-automatic you have available, the shotgun is always an excellent option. And of course, all of this, I think it has to go along, being said, as long as you already have your handgun. The handgun for me is the main thing. The main gun for a survivalist, that's gonna be your handgun. This is your main gun as a survivalist. This is your main gun. That's always nice to have. And if you're gonna be putting it to use and you have the possibility, by all means, more firepower, more range, more of pretty much everything. But this is the thing you can have with you at all times. And because of that, you want to have a proper flashlight on your gun, a tactical light of some sort. Again, OLIGHT, could be some other brand. OLIGHT has been quite good. I haven't had a single OLIGHT product that has failed me, and I don't exactly baby them. I have more than enough so to beat the crap out of them. They all work pretty decently. This has a red dot, yes, a laser as well. Laser and red dot, not the same thing. That's not projecting any kind of light. It's all contained. This, yes, you have a little red laser there, but mostly for close distance, it's going to be using the light, the focus light, the hot spot. That's where you're going to be pulling the trigger and putting the bullets where it matters. in terms of less than lethal options, guys, I think you should have them, you know, especially not so, maybe the less than lethal shotgun ammo, it's more of a question for me. It's going to be depending on certain very specific cases, but they have happened, not only during the riots of 2001, the economic collapse of Argentina, December 2001, based, you know, my book is based on that modern survival manual. This one is based on precisely that. If you're interested on that, links for that below. But also some of the other events that kept on happening, like a pretty bad strike from the police. The police were not responding, and this went on for, I think, for a couple of weeks, if I'm remembering correctly. And people just took matters into their own hands. And criminals, at first, when they heard that the police was not responding anymore nationwide, it was madness. But soon enough, heads started rolling, people started getting hanged and shot and killed, and soon enough, it was criminals asking for the police to please come back and put things back how they used to be, which they like better than just being slaughtered and lynched by the mob. But the mob armed themselves with whatever else they had. You know, I've seen guys with machetes, kitchen knives, spears, improvised spears, shotguns, double-barrel shotguns, 22 rifles, handguns, whatever else you had, people organize and use that. Talking about that, if you're going to be finding yourself in that sort of scenario, you want to have body armor. Body armor is the kind of thing that a lot of people don't think a whole lot about, but believe me, if there's a possibility of you getting shot, instead of having 10, 12 different guns, get yourself a kit with, you know, with rifle plates, with Kevlar. The more obvious option would be a plate carrier with magazine pouches. That makes a whole lot of sense. Something like that is nice because it's concealable, soft body armor, but it's not going to be stopping a rifle round. So, you know, keep that in mind. Maybe the rifle plates and carriers makes more sense for that. Pepper spray, if you have the option of not having to shoot someone, I think the pepper spray makes more sense even than the less than lethal ammo for the rubber buckshot. This is the kind of thing that if things are kind of getting violent, and you see this, guys, you see this. You saw on the Kyle Rittenhouse outside the courts, you saw some guys getting, you know, ballsy and a little bit violent. There's a lot of gray area in between having to shoot someone and not having a problem. A lot of that can be handled quite well by this kind of pepper spray. I leave the link. This you can actually buy on Amazon. Pepper spray, it's sold on Amazon. I leave the link there below. This is something that you should have like on every car, on every purse of your the females in your household, for yourself as well. It just makes a whole lot of sense to have pepper spray. There's so many cases in which you could avoid something escalating into something where you need no option left but to use a lethal option. A lot of that could have been handled by that, especially in the kind of interactions we're seeing these days where people are just violent, you know, for no good reason. It's not a dedicated criminal that has a specific plan. It's just an asshole that's being a jerk and is escalating up to a point where he feels, I'm gonna be messing with you, I'm gonna be hurting you and your loved ones. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe these two, pepper spray, handgun, in your house, depending on where you are, what you may be needing, something like this going on as well. And remember, Street Survival Skills, where I explain a lot of the self-defense aspects, firearms, self-defense, home, and yeah, you know, if you can get an actual defensive shooting class, I always recommend that by all means. It's always better. But for people that are not, they cannot do that, if you cannot take a class, this is a book that I wrote specifically with a lot of the things I learned myself in different classes. You know, the way of actually running guns the way you're supposed to, how to do that properly within reason. It's not as good as actually going to a class, which by all means you should have invested on that a long time ago. But even in places, there's countries in which you cannot actually take classes like that. There's simply none available, or they're downright just banned because of whatever legislation they may have. So if you cannot have that kind of training and you have a gun and you're thinking of maybe eventually having to use that for self-defense, Street Survival Skills is what I would recommend for that. Folks, it's gonna be all for now. See you on our next next video, subscribe to the channel, mostly because it really helps with the channel, subscribing to it. The algorithm on YouTube, you know, is always appreciated, but also because if there's anything else going on, anything important that I think you guys should be knowing, that's going to be going up here in the channel. And if you haven't subscribed and hit that notification bell button, you may end up missing something relevant or important for you. See you on our next video. Have an awesome day, guys. Take care.